Welcome, Shelby. Thanks for coming on today. It's great to chat with you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I was reading a bit through your LinkedIn and how you went to Drake Law School, right?
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
And then, did you grow up in North Dakota or?
I did. So I
Yeah.
grew up in Kindred, North Dakota. I went to undergrad at North Dakota State University. I majored in agricultural economics, and then I went to law school after that at Drake. And so the reason for Drake is kind of, I have to go back a little bit farther than actually choosing Drake. So um, while I was growing up. My dad was my hero, and I saw that he was helping farmers, but I didn't really know exactly what he was doing. And then in high school, I got into FFA and I started doing ag sales. And I started by selling this. Are you familiar with the competition in FFA agricultural sales at all?
No, not really.
Okay, so are you familiar with FFA at all?
I know what it is. I haven't really gotten involved ever, so.
Okay, sure. So most of the time, I'd say it's high school oriented, but it's teaching students from, seventh grade on. It's a club that you can join, and it's skills around agriculture and around the broader agriculture. So you can do crops judging, where you're judging something to do with crops. I didn't do that. But it's row crop judging. It's looking at specific things. It's probably identifying whether or not it's sprout. It's like agronomy. It's agronomy. It's someone that agronomists would do. And then there's livestock judging. There's other winter contests. One of these winter contests is agricultural sales. So it's teaching young people how to be able to sell, and it evolves around agriculture. So you could sell a tractor, you could sell a combine, you could sell seed, you pick whatever package of things that you can sell. And then there's a team event where you don't get to choose, but you get to create this marketing plan around this specific product that they give you. But in your sale, you get to choose your product, you get to create the sales situation. So I started out by selling this slug repellent for a garden. And it was fine. It wasn't great. I'm not a gardener. My mom loves to garden, and I would help as need be, but that was not it for me. And then my mom was like, "Well, why don't you sell dad's service?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's dad's service?" So I found out at that point that my dad created a crop marketing and crop insurance firm, an overall risk management agency. And so that's called Progressive Ag. And so what he does is he helps farmers market their grain at better prices through the futures market or through the cash market. So there's different elevator contracts that farmers can contract forward their growing crop that's in the field, and they can store stuff in the bin and contract it later when prices get better. So there's a futures market, which is the overall broader commodity markets, which includes gold, silver, stuff like that. It also includes corn, wheat, soybeans, soybean oil, canola, some other different things like that. They used to have an onion exchange, and it went so terrible they got rid of it. So but it's an exchange because crops can only grow for a certain period of time and can only be stored for a certain period of time. But in order to create a market that's broader than just this specific period of time, they created the futures market. And that's my brief, like very uninformed version of that. But the futures market is like the stock markets, except it can be a lot more volatile, because as much as stock markets have sway due to like political power, world powers, and different things like that, as well as just their own stock price. If CEOs get killed or CEOs get, all of these different scenarios that are really bonkers. Well, all of that can happen in the futures market, but you're also at the mercy of the weather. And the
Hmm.
weather is completely unpredictable all the time. As much as humanity can be unpredictable, the weather is more unpredictable. So the futures market can have drastic changes. That being said, the dollar amounts are less, but the volatility is more. So it's really hard to win in the futures market if you're speculating. And by speculating, I mean someone that doesn't actually grow the crop.
Hmm.
So someone that grows the crop, they're like, okay, I know I'm going to have a certain amount of bushels of soybeans, but it's growing right now, but I want to price it. So I could buy a futures contract or I could sell a futures contract. In this case, a farmer would sell a futures contract, which is selling crop to be delivered to someone else. Usually you're not actually selling it for delivery. Usually contracts you end up getting in and getting out, but by getting in and getting out, you're setting a price floor for yourself, or you're hedging the price on the futures market versus the cash. So even though you can't sell the grain because it's growing in the field, you can sell the grain on the futures market. Or you can sell it ahead of time to the elevator, and then the elevator hedges their risk on the futures market. So it's all around risk management. So that's what my dad does. So
Yeah.
he does that. And then crop insurance has this revenue protection kind of built in price mechanism to where if you use the crop marketing advice that my dad has with the crop insurance, you can actually have better overall risk management on the crop insurance side too. So my dad kind of packaged that together and created this thing. So one of those things that Progressive Ag does is Progressive Ag Market Line is the market commentary. It's a market advice that's specific to, okay, okay, farmer, you got canola in the bin. Canola is a good price today. You should price it at the elevator. And so that is
Well,
like our recommendation overall to, sell your grain at this price. Or if you're dealing in the futures market, we have a brokerage that is a hedging first brokerage. If you're dealing in the futures market, you're calling a broker and talking to them one-on-one about whether you should buy this contract or sell this contract.
mm,
And it's all around risk management to, instead of all of the volatility being like this and you not being able to do anything about it because you're growing a crop, it's more like, okay, I can choose this. And then I know that at least I have locked in a profit.
mm. Probably gives a lot more like peace of mind to farmers.
Yeah, as much as you can. Farming is not for the faint of heart. That's for sure. So my dad does that. A long explanation to get to this point. But um, so I started selling his marketing advice packages. I sold his most common package, and I did well. I started doing a lot better. I think it was a unique product, but I also knew it better. I knew how to sell it better, and I was actually selling it to the point where I started representing my father's business at trade shows as a junior in high school.
Oh,
And so
that's awesome.
I would be able to sell marketing packages in my agricultural sales competition and then sell it in real life. And that gave me sales skills. And then I decided that along with the marketing side of things, even though maybe pricing the grain and being a broker wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to do, I knew that I liked the risk management part. I knew that I liked working with farmers. I knew that I liked and was fairly good at by this point sales. And so when I was 18, I took the training to become a crop insurance agent. So then I started selling crop insurance when I was 20. I've been selling it now for 7 years, well, 8 years. And within crop insurance, there are multiple rules, and crop insurance is subsidized by the federal government, also mostly controlled as far as rules go by the federal government, the risk management agency. There are certain rules that actually makes it attractive for beginning farmers to start farming, to farm with less risk than the previous generation did because of opportunities that RMA just gives you. But it takes a good agent to understand the way that those rules actually work. And it helps to actually be an attorney to be able to interpret those rules, maybe even better than some insurance companies do.
Mm,
So I was focusing on the farm transition within crop insurance. And the more that I focused on the farm transition within crop insurance, the more I realized that there was much more to the farm transition than just my little niche of risk management between, the crop marketing, the brokerage, and the crop insurance. And I saw an opportunity that I don't know, I guess other people didn't see. And I decided I wanted to at least try to go to law school and actually do the legal part of the farm transition, not just in my little niche of the crop insurance world,
Hmm.
but everything else within estate planning and within the actual farm transition. And when I was looking at law schools, Drake University was the closest because I had crop insurance customers in North Dakota and Minnesota by that point. But it was the closest law school that I had an actual agricultural law program. And it was, at least at that point, told to me that they were number 2 in the country as far as agricultural law schools go. The first one was in Arkansas, and that's too far for me to go from my customers and my family. And my boyfriend at the time was back in North Dakota. So that's why I chose Drake. Now, what I will say about Drake is Drake has a wonderful practical curriculum compared to other law schools. From what I understand and from talking to other attorneys, Drake does a really good job of teaching practicality. They have a very good clinic where students can actually be student attorneys and work with clients. And I did the transactional clinic, so I helped businesses create their business entity documents. So I did actual entity creation for that. And that was a lot of fun. And that was actually like 6 credits of my senior year or third year. They call it 3L year in law school. So I will say Drake gave me that, but I ended up not taking many of the agricultural law classes because a lot of them were focused around environmental law, which they have a great program for that. But I was interested in representing farmers and ranchers, so that didn't make sense for me. And other really good classes were food law. And again, I wasn't going to work in big agribusiness. I was representing farmers, so food law didn't make sense for me either. Food safety and different things like that. It's like, okay, well, that's all good and interesting, but I'm doing estate planning.
Right. Yeah.
I'm doing farm transitions. That's my plan going into law school. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not going. So, um, and I was very blessed with a full ride scholarship from Drake. So that was a huge reason for me to go to law school. I was looking multiple job offers in the face, and then going full time into crop insurance was always an option too. So for me to actually choose law school, it was a difficult decision. And being an out of state private school, that would have been a hefty bill. And I'm very thankful for those that invested in me in my education in undergrad and law school. So I'd like to eventually be able to give back in that way too. So Drake was great on the practical side, but I ended up graduating with a business law minor because I happened to take mergers and acquisitions and contract drafting and all of an estate planning and all of this stuff that gave me credits for business rather than agriculture specific. So it was interesting. I went to apparently the number 2 ag law school in the country, and I took almost no ag law classes, but whatever. Um, but I am thankful for my time at Drake, and Drake has a lot of good qualities as much as things I think that could be improved. They could have classes for people wanting to represent farmers and ranchers, I think.
Hmm.
Um, so now, started my own law firm, Ag Legacy Law. I do exactly what I set out to do in law school, which was representing farmers and ranchers as far as their estate planning goes and helping them work through that farm transition. I'm still doing the crop insurance stuff, still doing the farm transition within the crop insurance side of things. And they actually mesh pretty well together, which I wasn't necessarily not expecting it because my clients in law would be customers in crop insurance and vice versa. But I didn't realize how intertwined it would end up being on the
Hmm.
risk management and farm transition side of things. And so I'm also involved in a management position within Progressive Ag. So I'm an independent agent, crop insurance agent through Progressive Ag Systems, which is the crop insurance agency. But I also am in a management position over all 3 of those companies within Progressive Ag. And it's my own family business transition. So my mom
Oh.
is actually involved in the business. My dad was the founder and current president, and my little brother, is actually coming into the business as well, and my sister-in-law. So it's a whole family business, and so I'm able to pull from my experience in honestly being within a family business for 9 years of my life, well, more, 10, over 10 now, because I would have started as a junior in high school. I'm 28 now. So yeah, maybe even 11. Um, that's how you can get 5 years of experience before you graduate high school.
Start
Um,
early.
yeah, yeah. So, so for me, I actually can pull from my experience as a next generation coming into a previous generation. I I also teach agricultural law at NDSU at North Dakota State University, my alma mater,
Oh,
and that class I'm basically teaching as if I'm teaching the class that I wish would have been available to a young law student wanting to represent farmers and ranchers.
mm,
And actually, to farmers and ranchers, teaching law to farmers and ranchers. So, my class would teach agriculture to law students, and it would teach law to agricultural students.
mm.
But right now, all of my class, there was one person in my class that was actually interested in constitutional law, which I was like, thanks for being here. But most of the students in my class for the last 3 years have been agricultural economics majors or minors or agribusiness majors. So most of them are about half of my class is going back to the farm, the other half into the agribusiness workforce mostly. For the first time this year, I did have 3 students that actually did want to go on to law school, which is
That's
which
exciting.
yeah, it hasn't happened to me before, but I'm like, sweet, awesome. This is a very practical class. Hopefully get one of these in law school too. So I pull from my students' experiences in class,
Hmm.
trying to figure out how to transition back into the farm. I'm pulling from my own family business experience. And then I'm pulling from my experience handling the previous generation struggling or not struggling, have done it successfully, the transition, the estate plan within my estate planning business. So I actually get to see all points, both from a personal perspective, a personal experience, but also from an experience of, here's this party over here and here's this party over here. And some people, I'm talking to my people out there that would be my millennials, my 40 to 60s. And maybe that's not, I don't know generations very well. Let's just say whatever. It's the 40s to 60s. Some of them are stuck in the middle, especially those that are 35 to 45, I would say. Because most of the time they're still building their business. They've been well established, but they might have children, especially those 45-year-olds. They might have children that are 20 by now that are trying to get their own land, trying to get access to their own land. And this 45-year-old doesn't even own his land yet because his dad still farms at 70.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so my 45-year-olds are actually sometimes the hardest group to be able to help because they've got generation one over here, but they're trying to be generation one themselves to the generation two coming up. And so, and my terms of generation one versus generation one would be the current operating generation who's currently got the responsibilities, who's the matriarch or patriarch of the operation, that type of thing. And then generation two would be the generation wanting to come up, wanting the non-hostile take over the farm, right? So
Hmm.
something like that. So I would consider myself generation two. My brother, who's 6 years younger than me, coming into the business right now, he's the part of the same generation. He's generation two as well. He's just 6 years behind me. That creates its own type of dynamic. And then generation one is my dad, but that's pretty clear because my dad's the founder, right? If
Hmm.
my grandpa would have been the founder, okay, well, who's currently operating and managing the family business? Is it my grandpa or is it my dad? In this case, I'm 28, my dad's 62, it's my dad. Um,
Hmm.
if my dad's dad has passed away, and he passed away at 93, and that was like 9 years ago. So he would be like well in age if he was, alive right now.
Yeah.
But but that's not really a possibility. That's why I say usually the like 45 to 55-year-olds, they might be struggling. Now, depending on how late the farm transition starts or how non-existent the farm transition is, we could get into the like 60 and 65-year-olds that feel stuck and don't yet have management responsibility or financial security at that point too, which that one is really challenging.
Mhm.
And some of that is due to circumstance or how capable that person was, how capable their parents are or were, and stuff like that. So everyone kind of ends up in a different situation. So I'll talk in some generalities, but I'll talk in some specifics too as far as the farm transition goes, because not every 30-year-old is going to be ready to take over the farm at that point. Not every 40-year-old is going to have a family that they want to provide for and have a secure future for. Not every 60-year-old is, ready to transition in the next generation. So, and that being said, that would be like usually every 10 years we're looking at a different place within the generation. The 20-year-old is a sponge wanting to come back and learn as much as possible, trying to be a hired hand. They're not expecting very much usually, but some 20-year-olds in my class are farming already. They farm 100 acres, 200 acres by themselves. They're not even necessarily leasing from dad or mom or
Wow.
grandpa. They're just leasing their stuff on their own, or they're building a custom planting business so that they can lease these acres over here. Or they're at a 2-year school right now. They have a neighbor back home that's been training them since they were 15. The neighbor has no kids, or the neighbor has no kids that want to farm. So they're moving into that, transition sooner rather than later. So there are some 20-year-olds that actually have management responsibility over even a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old, but most 20-year-olds are sponges. 30-year-olds, they're maybe starting to settle down, they're starting to have kids, they want some more management and responsibility. By the time that 30-year-old is 40, they really want to know what the future holds for them, because they're trying to secure their financial future. They're thinking about their financial future. My 40-year-olds out there are usually the ones that actually come to me saying, hey, my mom and dad need to do something here.
Mhm.
And usually it's the 40-year-olds that have said, hey, I've been working here for 20 years, 25 years. I need some more equity here. And I finally am able to build enough up to be able to do so.
Right.
So the 40-year-old, that's really where I'm starting to see a lot more of the contract for deeds of the transition of the full management responsibilities. Maybe up until that point, that 20-year-old built a lot of diesel mechanic skills. And by 30, they were managing a team,
Hmm.
fixing up the equipment, and they were managing the hired hands and doing that stuff and starting to build equity and having more acres. And then by the time that they're 40, they're they're wanting more, even more of a transition. They're starting to look at more of the financial side, maybe, and they were never a financial side person before. And maybe that 40-year-old has a 65-year-old, 70-year-old dad or mom that, or let's say most of the time it's the mom who's somewhat involved in the operation, mostly on the financial side. Mom wants to retire,
Ah.
and mom wants dad to retire.
Hmm.
And more often than not, I'm seeing this less often lately, but more often than not with my 60, 78, or 80-year-old clients that come in, especially the 60s. 60s are starting to retire from their off farm jobs, right? Whether that be the mother or the father of the husband or the wife. But they're starting to retire for their off farm jobs. They've built a large income. Maybe they're taking little steps out of the business, whatever it may be. My dad certainly is. What retirement looks like for a farmer or a rancher is what they like to do the most on the farm or ranch.
Ah. Yeah.
Many farmers and ranchers don't actually want to be done, because to be quite frank, I already said farming isn't for the faint of heart. But so really, why would you subject yourself to years of torment and risk risk unlike almost anything else that you could possibly do.
Right.
Um, if you didn't love it,
Hmm.
if it didn't make your soul happy, right? So why would you ever stop? Why would you ever stop? So, for that generation, for that anywhere from the 20 to 40s, whatever generation two is, wherever you are, whatever age that you are, what you have to say is, Mom and Dad, we're not trying to kick you out. We're not trying to push you off. Just what does a perfect day on the farm look like for you?
Hmm.
Let's get to that. Let's get to that. Okay, what's your least favorite thing? I'll do it if I can, or I'll learn it and we'll figure it out. And that's what me and my dad are doing. He doesn't really want to deal with the day to day, and my dad has. I'm very privileged to have had my dad look at very successful and see very successful, very large farms transition successfully to the next generation. One guy in particular, it's a $100 million farm,
Wow,
a
that's
family farm.
big.
They grow vegetable crops, uh, and the generation one in that family had done a successful transition to his son and his daughter, well, daughter-in-law, I guess, daughter-in-law and his son, on $100 million farm. They have over 300 employees. And he said, Ray, which is my dad's name, the only way that you're going to attract good talent back to the farm, the only way that if you truly think that your kids are talented enough to build the business better than what you did, or talented enough to do as good of a job as you do, and you want to ensure that the business continues to them, you have to tell them when you're getting out of their way.
Mm.
You have to give them a timeline and tell them, okay, at this point you're in charge of this, and at this point you're in charge of this. You can come to me whenever, and in fact I want you to, but you're in charge. I'm taking a back seat.
Yeah, doing the fun job now.
Yeah, doing the fun. I'm having fun now.
Yeah.
I'm really having fun now. I was having fun back then when I had to do all of the stuff that I didn't want to do, but now I'm really having fun. And that's the dream, man. That's the dream. But anyway, so creating that timeline is one of the most important parts of the farm transition and of my estate planning advice. It's a well executed farm transition,
Mhm.
or I should say, a poorly executed farm transition or a non existent farm transition, can bankrupt a farm or ranch, a successful, otherwise well run one, almost quicker or as quick as a hefty estate tax bill.
Yikes. They'll get you with those.
Yeah. So, man, I've been talking a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of little nuggets that you'd like to expand on and talk on, but what you got?
No, that was really cool. Well, so much there. I think I've heard of progressive ag before. I grew up, my dad ran a garden center slash plant nursery back in
Okay.
Illinois. And so we were pretty big for that industry. Um, and my dad transitioned from having a normal like bank to start using farm credit. Do you know farm credit?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So my dad was really tight with those guys, so they worked with us for a long time. And then my brother John got into farming in Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he
That's a
he
hard
met
place.
a I know northeastern part, so it was kind of like the Nebraskan flatlands.
Okay, yeah. So you wouldn't be that far, or he wouldn't be that far from like, well, I suppose Loveland, Colorado would be a little bit south of that. Fort Collins, a little bit south.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Got it. Got it.
yep. So I actually got to help a couple times with harvesting there. So I drove combine and truck for a bit. It was really fun. But
I bet.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, honestly, like you were talking about the fun job of being on a farm, and it is so much fun just being in a field all day. I don't know, it's so therapeutic. Like you're just humming along, picking up grain, you know.
Oh, well, now that we have drone shots, like watching harvest happen from a drone,
Yeah.
it's a it's a larger, more like meatier version of a Japanese garden, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way to
Totally
put
like
it.
that, you know? Yeah, so totally soothing. And very um uh actually like when farmers go out and spray for weeds.
Hmm.
I was actually talking to a colleague of mine. He's a crop insurance agent that also farms, and I'm training him right now. And he he never understood why his dad was so anxious and antsy to get out into a field to spray for weeds until he had his own field and he was looking at the field and he turns to his dad. He's like, Dad, we have to spray. We have to spray right now. It looks so awful out there. And then, and then they spray, and then it's just this beautiful soybean field or this beautiful cornfield again. It's so satisfying. And he's like, I never understood like the breath of relief that my dad would have, or like how proud he would
Mhm.
be of how clean his fields are and different things like that until I had my own, until I was crop scouting out there, until I was on farm and seeing the before and after. And it's the same with harvest. Just and with planting. You're planting into black dirt,
Mhm.
black if you're lucky, I guess, black if you have good dirt, brown
Yeah.
otherwise. And then all of a sudden, like this green comes out from it and just blossoms and grows throughout the year. Both of my parents grew up on farms, and both of my farms have successfully transitioned from my grandparents to my uncles, and now one farm is transitioning from my or has successfully transitioned from my uncles to my cousins. And the other farm, my uncles are still full-time farming. And we don't necessarily know what the transition looks like for them because they had all daughters and none of the daughters seem to want to farm, or one maybe wants to farm. So, they're
Mhm.
working through it right now. Um, but this, the successful transition from generation to generation. And both of my parents love gardening and
Oh yeah.
love agriculture and love crop insurance and stuff like that. But my mom, it's like my husband actually will crack a joke that, my mom loves working so much that all of her hobbies are just more work. And one of her hobbies is gardening. And it's like, it's her favorite thing. And it's like, it can be backbreaking work,
Oh
like
yeah.
weeding by hand and rototilling and doing all of that stuff, fencing, um, battling gophers.
Hmm.
It's just a whole thing. And my mom loves that. And even though my parents aren't directly farming anymore, they're impacting farmers' lives, and they still grow their own plants. And it's like my mom's just like, I just like watching things grow. And so there is really something to that that's like visceral. It's like partaking in creation in this way that you don't really you don't really get that in such an intimate way, to be one with the environment and one with nature, as much as being a farmer or a rancher.
Yeah. That was something I've wondered a little bit about. I don't know if you have thoughts on this, but like, there's a huge trend of a lot of young people loving country music now. And
Yeah.
I wonder if everyone's just kind of longing for that, I don't know, expansiveness of agriculture, like the ground, like your work is what makes something happen. And then it's almost like you see your life in front of you, like however well you farm will then provide for your family and others. And I think a lot of people are just so bored all the time because it's very monotonous work. But like, even though a farm is like super risky, it's very exciting at the same time because you're never really sure what's going to happen. You're hoping for the best, but it's really not up to you at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. And there's something to like, if we're talking the broader scheme of things right now, we could say that the world has a crisis of purpose, right? Like,
Mm.
that's pretty clear. There's definitely a crisis of purpose going on, theoretically, spiritually, in reality, like whatever you want to say, whatever angle you want to take that, there's definitely a crisis of purpose. It might be, boredom, loneliness, like, lack of education and skills, whatever it may be. But yeah, like, and I think that romanticizing of Yellowstone and growing things and homesteading and all that stuff, I think we're in this very on-screen age, and I think we're starting to see the the off-screen be way more valuable, especially in the age of AI. And I mean, this is like a way tangent, but if you think about it, like, you have a drawing behind you, um like right there, there's a drawing
Yeah,
behind you right there. And how much more special is that drawing by a person than if AI had done it on a computer?
I know. Actually, this one, I can show you the other one here. So my grandpa actually drew these. Um,
Wow, that's so special.
do you know like Morton Salt?
Yeah.
So this is kind of a wild tangent as well. He that family, well, the Morton family, started an arboretum in Illinois. So they like had a 2,700 acre place for just to grow things for people to come see. And so my grandpa was a landscape architect for that. So this was part of the project there to like draw trees as like a collection of like what he thought was like the ultimate shape of each tree, so people could kind of see what the mature tree would look like, even when they started saplings.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
It's that wild. I know. And my dad told me that each one took him 70 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
It's
So
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. Like, so, as much, as much as technology has made things easier and more efficient and our lives better in a lot of ways, it does make the tedious and the like humanness, like the human, non-perfect or not as perfect and longer, tedious, drawn out stuff actually more valuable. And like, when you think about it,
Mm.
I'm an economics girl, right? So like, supply and demand. Um, okay, we have a lot more supply of art, but it's a specific kind of art that's, animation, AI type art. Okay, well, what do we not have as much of? We don't have, and have a finite number of very successful artists doing it by hand.
Yeah.
We have even less sculptors. I don't even know where to find one of those. And taxidermy, I'm a hunter, so taxidermy, it's hard to come by. It's hard, like that those arts are almost lost. My
Hmm.
husband owns a business that this is owns a business that relates to foot health, and one of the products that they sell, their most popular products, are footwear, and one of those is a pair of boots. And he found a handmade boot maker in Wisconsin to make American made boots. It's otherwise a lost art, but this dude is
Wow.
24 years old, and in Wyoming, that's just making it, you know that figured it out, found like some of the old tools to use, and is reviving this lost art.
That's
And
awesome.
and there's gonna be more of that. Like, there's Airbnb. Me and my husband did an Airbnb experience in North Carolina that was blacksmithing.
Really?
So think about like the clash of the old and the new. We found an Airbnb experience
Hmm.
to blacksmith. So technology can be a great thing, because technology literally like gave us this guy, and then this guy had the old forge that we could actually forge knives out of. That's bringing back the old into the new in a recreational sense, but I don't know, someday it might be in an actual sense, because there might be something to that, like that beating from a hammer, that's just way better than what a machine can do. And we just don't know what
Yeah.
that looks like yet. And maybe that's only for like the little projects that humans can do better than machines now, but there's a lot of that. And when it comes to agriculture and farmers, there's there's plenty of machines that are helping out the work, and there still has to be a human behind it doing all of that. And
Yeah.
when we get to, the crisis of purpose and the homesteading, I think a lot of people long to be in nature, um, and I think that's why we get this topsy-turvy view of environmentalism as well, why we get the hyper focus on carbon without really understanding what that's doing to nature and biodiversity, especially when it comes to livestock farming.
Hmm.
The livestock literally are part of the circle of life, and it
Yeah.
creates biodiversity and natural fertilizer. And why Ireland? Why are you culling dairy cattle in Ireland when you have the best genetics of the world and you create an insane amounts of dairy products off of these cows that are being cared for in the best way? You already don't have much industry. Why are you doing that? And why are
Yeah.
you doing it in the name of carbon when what cows do is actually sequester carbon in a way that's more usable to humans and natural? It just it's all it's all backwards. It's topsy turvy. But I think the more that that agriculture can advocate for itself using these technological platforms, and more people that truly want to discover nature the way that it exists and wants to be out and doing something more purposeful, um, I think I think we're moving towards something that's better for humanity as a whole. And like, dude, I've lived in downtown Minneapolis, and all I was doing was searching for grass. And I'm not talking weed,
Oh,
I'm talking the grass that you can walk on, right?
yeah.
Like, all because I grew up in a town of 800 people. I grew up in the countryside of a town of 800 people. I
Super
had to,
small.
so it was beautiful, like woods all around us, and there was a dike in the middle. In the wintertime we'd sled on it, and I had a horse, I had dogs, I had cats, I was like in nature all the time. Like, I would have sword fights with trees, right? And growing up like barefoot in grass and gravel roads and woods and nature and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden I'm plopped in the middle of downtown Minneapolis. It's great. I mean, I went to a lot of concerts, but I was constantly searching for grass and gravel roads and just less noise.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, even those that quote unquote love the city, love city life, love, the fun that you can have in cities, going to shows and doing all of this different stuff, and having your Costco close to you, which I love Costco and I love it being close to me. Um, but like having all of that stuff near you and having access to that, but you're always hearing noise. You're always being busied or hurried by something. And when that person goes out into the woods of Minnesota, or sees a waterfall, or goes and looks at a cornfield and actually stands in one, or stands in a barley field and see the waves of grain, go back and forth. It's like golden yellow to bright yellow, and then golden yellow to bright yellow. And when they look at that, they're like, holy crap, I can't hear
Yeah.
any, you know? And
Just remind a break.
yeah. And I think for mental health reasons, everyone, like, nature is actually healing in a lot of ways, and doing that. And I think that's part of what you're experiencing when you were in the tractor, right? It was
Yeah.
peaceful. It was loud. Tractors are loud. My dad is hard of hearing for it, but um it's peaceful. You're doing the same thing, and you're seeing crop growing, or you're harvesting that crop, like, and you're just going back and forth with passes, and otherwise it's just you and the tractor and the field.
Yeah.
And more often than not, coming back to the farm transition, my my clients, more often than not, the generation one, what a good day on the farm looks like is they're in the combine, they're in the tractor,
Yep.
they're doing grain cart, they're
Uh-huh.
they're not doing any of the office stuff anymore. They just want to go and grow the crop. They don't want to worry about the crop marketing anymore. They don't want to worry about talking to the elevator. They don't want to worry about talking to the broker. They don't want to do it. They just want to go out, drive the tractor. And
Yeah.
that's usually it. That's usually their favorite day on the farm. It might look a little different. Some people would like the cows better than the row crop. Some people would like the row crop better than the cows. Some people really do like the crop marketing side of things. And because of my dad's business, I see more of those types of people that, there's I want to say he's probably late 70s and he still markets the crop on the farm. His son otherwise runs the farm completely. His grandson is coming back to the farm, coming into the farm,
Mm.
middle North Dakota, and he just, manages the marketing from everywhere because he likes it. And his son's like, I don't want to do that.
Thanks, Dad.
You're better. You're better at it anyway. Like, yeah, let's keep it. I like managing the employees. I like doing the agronomy. I like all of that stuff. And his dad, the marketer guy, is like, okay, I don't want to do any of that other stuff anyway. And so it works out. But like when you're 20 and 25 and 30, that's what you're trying to figure out. You're trying to figure out, okay, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? And what does dad hate? And what does dad hate or what does mom hate? What can I do? And then that's my in. That's my step in the door of starting the farm transition. Then you can be like, mom and dad, I did really good here. Can I try this thing?
Yeah.
And then can I try this thing?
Hmm.
And that's a really smooth way of doing that. And if you do that humbly, and I say this to my class, if you do that humbly, you can learn a lot. You're curious, you're a sponge, and the previous generation might actually let you do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah. Honestly, that is something interesting is I learned this a little too late, but um so my dad had closed his business down in 2019. Just for Illinois is not a very small business friendly place.
Right.
Um, but one of the things I think he was trying to show us was that so I'm one of five kids. He was trying to show us like the goodness of a small business, even though we saw all of the difficulties all of the time. He's trying to say, well, it's a really good thing. Let me just show you the ways that I know work, and you can expand on those, but I'm just going to show you like the base plan. And I think all of our young energy was like, well, we know what's going on, Dad. Let's just change it all up, and that kind of drives a wedge in between the family, I think. And if like the older generation one dad can say, "This is what it is, son. This is what's worked for me." There's a lot of new things happening, but maybe just follow my lead. I think that's such a better way of keeping the family together through that business process.
Yeah, and there's a balance there, right? So I was talking to this old farmer son, has successfully taken over his farm. He said, the one rule that we have on our farm is you cannot farm like your father,
Hmm, interesting.
because if you do not change and grow at all, you'll fail.
Hmm,
That's their motto. Don't farm like your father.
wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's interesting. And I was like, whoa, what? Like,
Yeah.
but here's what that does. So like it wouldn't work for every personality, but someone who feels the weight, and I see this with some of my crop insurance customers as generation two. Some of the multi-generational farms, your generation three, generation four, generation seven, generation nine. There's nine generation farms out there, right? In America, there's nine generation farms. In Europe, probably 16. I don't know. But um, sometimes you can physically feel the weight of all the generations that came before you
Hmm, hmm.
on their shoulders. So when they make decisions, they don't make decisions quickly, they don't pivot easily.
Oh.
Not everyone. Again, not every personality, and this isn't the case for every farm. But I wonder if the personalities of that older gentleman that had successfully transitioned the farm, his dad told him he's not allowed to farm like his father. He told his son, you're not allowed to farm like your father.
Hmm.
And for them, that was probably really important because that weight of previous generations wasn't necessarily on their shoulders anymore. And really, like, what I would say is, I say this, and I actually get this from Dave Ramsey. He has a wonderful EntreLeadership podcast that has taught me a lot about leadership and about growth and about managing employees and operating a business successfully. Not all people will agree on all of his philosophies, but I think his EntreLeadership podcast is very practical advice on how to run successfully a small business, and especially the transition, because he's going through it too. But he says, and I say this to my class now, instead of, now it's me talking like with a weight on your shoulders from the previous generations. This is what Dave says: you're standing on the backs of giants.
Mm.
That's where the previous generations are. They're building you up. They're not pushing you down. They don't belong on your shoulders as a weight. They belong under your feet as a ladder or something. So I think it's a visual representation of how, multi-generational people need to think about the generations before them. You can come humble and respectful and excited and grateful for everything that the previous generation has done, and still not farm like your father
Mm.
if the situation requires that. If the
Right.
situation requires you to change, to adapt, to become the 2.0 version of your father. That's what I want to do. I want to be Ray 2.0. That's what I've said since I came into the business. I want to be Ray 2.0.
Like, do you have some ideas, like just being in the business, where you think you can take it based on the new, like, economic trends, things like that? Have you thought about like what 2.0 is going to look like, or are you still figuring that out?
Somewhat figuring it out, but part of the 2.0 is figuring out better ways to for training new agents. um,
Uh,
in our business. It's for training up new, better independent agents that are more capable than even we were. It's truly internalizing and understanding all of the rules as soon as possible, but just as much ignoring the noise, because there's a lot
mm,
of new products, especially in crop insurance. There's new products, or there's new flashy fundamental developments in crop marketing that honestly just distracts you from the stuff that really matters, from the stuff that makes money,
right.
from the news that makes money in crop marketing, from the rules or the new products, or the changing of products that actually makes money, or in this case reduces risk for farmers and ranchers. There's a lot of products coming out that you know don't really make sense for multiple reasons, and if you get distracted with those as an agent, then you're not focusing on helping your customers as much. You're just not as effective. And so I see that as being, continuing to be an opportunity, and that's something that my dad is really good at. And really it's just like more hands make light work. So we need more trainers in our business. Our business is growing substantially. I think accountability is something, day-to-day accountability is something that I can bring more to the table, especially since my dad in his later years, um, because he is lead market analyst of the crop marketing firm, it actually helps to for him to remove himself from the day-to-day,
Mm.
being
Hmm.
a day-to-day broker, because if you're looking at everything on a day-to-day basis in a way that's like very detailed, you can lose the forest in the trees in his business specifically, where other businesses you'd want like your lead person to like be in touch with a lot of different things, but actually like taking a step back in the crowd marketing world can actually create better recommendations. And so in that way, because he's not running the day-to-day operations, some of that employee management, HR type stuff, I'm not sure how much less effective it is, but I think there's more accountability that can be had now that I'm more actively managing the business on the day to day. But really, we just need more people, and then we can grow. And so that's partially where that comes from. Certain contracts are being updated because of my legal expertise, and that's just being better than we were before.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like relationships with certain vendors, with certain agents and stuff like that. So that's updating well, and I think it's a good use of my time. Um, yeah, those are probably the biggest things. My brother is very techy. He actually can create algorithms and can create websites and do all sorts of things like that. And he can code and he can create Excel spreadsheets that blow your mind, just different things like that. Um, from his time working with very successful regional investment firm, financial investment firm. And from that, he learned so many skills on evaluating investments correctly and stuff like that. And again, I've already said that I don't necessarily want to be a broker or handle the crowd marketing stuff. Well, my brother is like perfectly suited to be able to do that well, and he's perfectly suited on creating these systems that can pull data from PDFs easier and compile data. And so he can do that because of his like whatever techie woo woo stuff that he has that I don't understand at all. And so he's going to create efficiencies in our business so that the people that we hire can focus on the human stuff more than needing to focus on the stuff that could be done, like data entry that could be done by a computer. So yeah, I'm like, the more he gets into the business, the more I'm looking forward to being like, hey, could you do this to make my life easier?
Uh-huh.
And yeah, but as far as like the future of our business, on the crop insurance side of things, the reason crop insurance, well, I shouldn't say the reason, but one of the reasons crop insurance is so popular is because it's like very federally subsidized
Mm.
by the government. And so what like the biggest risk to my family's business is like the government's going to stop subsidizing it. And from an economic standpoint, the less the federal government has their hands on, usually the better, the more efficient. Um, but it would hurt for a long time before we got there. So I think that's the main risk to my family's business right now is, you know, the shock that it would cause to the whole of the agricultural world and especially crop insurance world if crop insurance was ever going to be substantially changed by the federal government because of whatever agricultural policies come through. So that's probably the biggest risk.
Mm-hmm.
But that also has created a great opportunity for us to understand rules better than other people and be able to navigate through all of that myriad of spaghetti that is the crop insurance handbook, in order to figure it. They actually lay it out very well. It's just a lot of different rules, and there's rules being updated all the time. So it's not that they write it bad. It's not badly written or anything. It's just a
Sure.
lot to go through. So, and me and my dad are better able to handle the explanations of all of that, and probably most people are. We both have law degrees and we both have done that. So my dad went back to law school when he was 48. So
Wow.
yeah, so he's
Very.
not practicing, but he does have that experience. So
I don't want to keep you too late because you said you just had an hour, but um, I did have one question about that, like policies and things like that. I don't know if you've been following Trump's plans, but he seems very pro-farmer in everything I've seen, especially what he did in his first term. And I was just curious if you'd seen anything that gets you excited for farmers across America that's coming from Trump's office.
yeah, so there's a few things, but one of those things is just hopefully decreasing inflationary spending and the
Mm.
creation of Doge. I actually think is some of the most promising things to the broader of the US and agriculture, especially with the inflationary spending of the previous administration and the, you could call it whatever you want, but most people call it warmongering, or funding foreign wars. A lot of that is causing more inflation in the United States, but it also has been hurting agriculture and our export markets specifically. So the creation of BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia, and a ton more. Argentina was in it, and then Milei pulled them out after he became president. So, so the creation of BRICS actually has created this different avenue of trade that doesn't include the US as much. And that's actually why we've seen prices as low as they are. And we drove Russia into China's hands by funding the Ukraine and Russia war. Whether that's right or wrong or whatever you want to say, but that has definitely, we've seen that in prices. And we've seen that in the creation of BRICS itself. BRICS happened after that war was started and after we started funding it. So it's pretty clear that there's a lot of foreign tension. And if we're talking about, winning over our export markets, I think there's a possibility that Trump and Trump's policies and his, negotiating power, that is something that's positive. Now, in 2017, Trump put on tariffs on China, and we saw soybeans go from $14 to like $8.
Oof.
Because China imports like 60% of our soybeans or something ridiculous like that. And so our soybean prices are hugely driven by China actually buying them. So what Trump did was he put tariffs on, China put tariffs on our exports. So China was trying to buy all of their soybeans from Brazil and other export markets, but Brazil and Argentina being our main competition there. And that hugely decreased soybean prices temporarily in the United States. But then they came to an agreement, and China was set to start buying not only our soybeans, but corn and wheat as well, our three major crops. And they agreed to do that. Well, then the Biden administration came in, and China didn't honor that. Now, I don't know how he forced China to do that, but I think if anyone is going to be crotchety enough to figure it out, it's probably going to be President-elect Trump. And so we'll see how China is going to navigate that and what, the foreign policy looks like now. But between, Trump's at least policies of wanting to end foreign wars and end our inflationary spending here, that should eventually drive prices down, at least somewhat. And he also wants to focus on American manufacturing and maybe put tariffs on, certain goods in foreign countries, which, temporarily, at least economically, you'd think would raise the prices of goods from those places, but it also would increase industry in the United States, or at least that's what he hopes for. That's what we all hope for. That's what he promises. So we'll see. But all of this tariff talk and stuff like that, it's either going to make money so maybe we can decrease taxes in the US and increase industry in the US, which is good for everybody, especially farmers, and hopefully eventually decrease inputs that are done in America and hopefully in other places. And three, if those tariffs don't go on, what's the reason? The administration got their way, or they came to an agreement. So that means hopefully China's buying more corn, wheat, and soybeans. We are continuing to get China's cheaper goods, maybe even at a more favorable rate. And we're producing more in the US, which for anybody that likes USA made, certain things you want them to be USA made. You want them, I want my beef to be US beef. Like Same. I do. We just grow beef better. We just do. A lot of our hamburger that you'd see, in Costco is mixed in with Brazilian beef, which is very lean and not very high quality compared to our beef. So the reason we actually can get cheaper beef prices, $4 a pound, which isn't cheap for a lot of people, 4.50 a pound or whatever. But the reason we have it at 4.50 a pound is because we actually are buying Brazilian beef and mixing it with our own, and we can get to that 88% ground beef, the 90% ground beef, the 93, the 97. So I don't think it's a bad thing that we're importing beef because it's actually making our beef usable for
Mm-hmm.
many different types of tastes.
Mm-hmm.
Our beef is higher quality though. So I'm wanting my steaks to be USA, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ground beef I can deal with, a ton of different kinds. We'll figure it out. Industry competition, that's great. Like, again, economics, I want the free market more than anything else. So all of that to be said, the closer we can get to more free market, less government market, the better. um,
Yeah.
if you think about it, 536 people, or I think it's 536, Congress decides we're 20% of all the money that goes around the people in the United States. 20% of that is decided by 536 people in our budget, in our federal budget.
It's insane. Absolutely insane.
That is a monopoly by definition.
Yeah.
So why do we have all of the lobbyist groups? Why do we have Washington D.C. in general? It's because everyone is trying to get a cut of that 20%. And it's from 536 people as an entity deciding where it goes. That is the definition of a monopoly. So the closer economically, again, just from economic principle, not even talking about politics or policy, from an economic principle, if we could get that number less than 20%, that's almost always going to be more efficient and more effective. And the consumers, whoever are the customers of this 20%, are going to be better almost all the time. And so any sort of thing that can get closer to that, just Doge. If Doge can get anything done, less wasteful spending. Yeah, hallelujah. Who doesn't want wasteful spending? Maybe we'll see something like, okay, if we don't have wasteful spending, we can actually decrease the deficit. We can actually start paying our debts.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we get rid of Argentina right now is a wonderful experiment
Yeah, it's
that
been
we
awesome.
get to watch. We don't even have to participate, but we get to watch what happens when someone with truly a free market mindset does stuff. And temporarily it hurt. They had to raise taxes temporarily, and then they've lowered them since. Housing has hugely decreased, the cost of housing. We're starting to get more innovation, economic prosperity in Argentina. It's a wonderful experiment for us because we don't have to. We can see like, okay, this went right, this went right. This is what we should expect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we can figure out how to do here. But having someone actually experiment with, okay, like who in the government is going to say no? I want less power and money.
Nobody. Yeah.
Not many,
Yeah.
not many.
Mm-hmm.
So someone, this is how I think it it doesn't have to be this way, but I think how you figure out whether someone is genuine, whether someone is trying to actually do something um without a hidden agenda, is if they're doing something that hurts themselves. It almost never happens. Like something to the detriment of their interests almost never happens because we like to the reason capitalism works is because it actually rewards people for acting in their best self-interest if it's purely capitalism, because if you make your customers happy, you get tickets of appreciation called money,
Mm-hmm.
right, with faces on them, and then you get to go and use that money and give tickets of appreciation to other people. So if you have perfect knowledge, perfect information, you're going to seek out, the most efficient, the most effective, the most aligned with your views place, whatever that is. And theoretically, that thing is helping you.
Right.
that there's exceptions. I mean, for example, heroin addicts. I mean, that's a competition, but not necessarily helping them. But in the general sense of things, that's why capitalism works, is because we mostly act in our best self-interest,
Hmm.
almost always, as a human behavior economic society. So so there's that. We have scarce resources. We only have a certain finite of resources. So who's going to get rewarded? It's the person that does what their customers need them to do
Hmm.
and can do it the most efficiently.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what capitalism rewards. So, besides that, if human nature is regularly acting in our best self-interest, whatever that may be. So, if you're faithful, it's like it's doing whatever God calls you to do in this righteous way or whatever. Or maybe it's generosity, or maybe it's protecting your family, or maybe it's making a lot of money and blowing it on hooker and hose. I don't know, but whatever, like, or hookers and blow. That's what I was getting at. Whatever it is,
Hmm.
whatever like is your self-interest, um, that's normally what people act in. Well, then someone that's not acting in their self-interest, it's either we don't have enough information about what the self-interest of that person actually is, or they're being very genuine.
Mm.
So Javier Milei, president of Argentina, has relatively kind of an economic superpower, also an economic disaster, but he's a president, so he could just take more. He could become a dictator.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want absolute power and money and resources, everything at his fingertips, absolute power? Who wouldn't want that? Not many people.
It's a big temptation. Yeah.
Huge temptation. And if power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's a quote. Don't know who said it, but it's a wonderful quote. But what does Javier do? He gets rid of whole branches of government, says, no, 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 I don't need this money. No, 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 I don't need this power. No, 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 we're getting rid of this power too. Maybe
Yeah.
some people would argue that makes him more powerful if he gets rid of all of these other people controlling, but if he's getting rid of money going to him too,
Hmm.
it's hard to say that he's acting in his best self interest as the current president. Now, what we also have to think about is, if I was going to be president, I would be thinking about my life after being president,
Right. Right.
my
Yeah.
life being president, for other than Kim Jong Un or, the current president of Venezuela, who apparently
Uh,
won the election again. But besides those people, um, how long are you actually going to be in power?
yeah.
So, I think if more people thought about that, if we actually did not have career politicians, but instead we had career people who went into politics to change a specific policy to be better, to be more efficient, and then went back out and let those policies actually dictate their life, we'd be in a different scenario.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because it seems that, well, it doesn't just seem, most of our problems in America have always been from deviating from the Constitution.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if we
So
did a case
yeah,
study, that'd probably be the case. I guess it depends on what you're reading into the Constitution and not as well. But
right.
yeah,
But I was just thinking
yeah,
about
I'd
because
say the
because
deviation from the concept of God-given rights, certainly slavery, that was a bad deal.
yeah.
Right? I don't, that was a bad deal. We messed up. And God given right of pursue, like you can't just like own a person,
No, yeah.
but that like plainly historically in the ancient world that was like, what do you mean we can't? Of course we can own anything. It's
Hmm.
just based on domination. It's not based on, these God-given rights. However you look at, whether there's a creator or if you're religious or not, arguably there are some, you know, inherent rights, God-given rights, if you think that there's a creator. And I think there's good evidence to say that there is. um and personally, I'm a Christian, so like I'm going from like the mercy and love and forgiveness that is Jesus as well. But like overall, just the whole concept of inherent rights, the whole concept of human rights, the whole concept of men and women being given equal opportunity and treated with equal dignity is not plain as day.
No, yeah. It took a
It's
lot
not.
of thinking for them to figure out. Yeah, it's so interesting you said that because many of the things we assume on, we don't have any evidence for. But the greatest things that we have to assume on, we don't really have evidence for because there have to be, that's your starting point. So it's
Yep.
like you have to start there to get somewhere. And so, yeah, it was genius that all of our founding fathers just looked through history and like, you know what, we need something totally different. We need to take aspects of things that worked and put something together that actually works, built on the dignity and respect of each person.
Yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
and they, the founding fathers didn't do everything right, but they had this wild radical idea, a
Yeah.
wonderful experiment, just like Argentina right now, but just a
Yeah.
wonderful experiment from somewhere. I mean, there nothing was like that before. There was no like government like our government before, like our checks and balances were meant to be. And that I still don't understand. I still don't get where they got it. It doesn't make any sense when you think about it historically and ancient wise. It does not make sense that there would be that much foresight from just like, four dudes or however many, 18, however many signed the Declaration of Independence. My public education in history terms was not that good. I've had to learn a lot more since my high school days, but just all of that, it's actually, and it's insane to think about. Like,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have thought of that. I would have been like, I don't know, yeah, probably a queen. And I guess people should own, I don't know, people should like grow stuff. So maybe they should own the stuff that they grow and maybe they should own the land. I don't know. Maybe. I guess that kind of makes sense. Maybe you should like own your shelter, your hut that you, I don't know, your horse, I guess. But I don't know. And isn't it the queen's? I wouldn't have come up with that idea. And then historically, the way that, ancient, we're talking ancient Rome, ancient Syria, Alexander Great, like that type of period, or like going back to BC and stuff like that. Like the organization of the world was just who could dominate someone else.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like sexual assault didn't exist. That wasn't a thing. You could dominate her or him, do it. You could you could dominate the market, you could dominate this, you could dominate that, you could conquer this whole nation. Okay, do it. You get their stuff.
Hmm.
Ancient thinking, it it's actually doesn't make sense why humans should have inherent rights.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have, really, if you don't have a Christian understanding or at least a very deep philosophical understanding, yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And
So
yeah.
it's just completely opposite of what we all like. Again, you already kind of said this, we assume truths.
Yeah.
But like really we're swimming in this worldview of stuff that from we're standing on the backs of giants, right? We're
Mhm.
in like if you live in a Western culture, you're swimming in the thoughts of Christianity specifically, but definitely in the thoughts of inherent human rights. And it's based on the Constitution, which is based on Christianity.
Mhm.
And Christianity came about these ideas of mercy and forgiveness that have never been seen before. And that's not plain. Someone hurt you, hurt them back. Don't
Yeah.
forgive them. That doesn't make any sense. So, for all of that, it's I don't know. Like there's some really good podcasts out there that kind of change your ways of thinking because of what like what thinking was in the ancient world versus
Hmm.
and identifying how far that is from where we think the world is today. And then it actually helps in interpreting not just like biblical text but like other text in the ancient time, like what would ancients actually get out of this text, out of this like writing and stuff. So all of that super interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. No, and just to kind of tie it together, uh, you're talking about like your business, helping farmers keep their estates and make good transitions so it doesn't just end up with the government or a bank or someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Reminds me a lot. I don't know if you've gotten into Bitcoin much or studied it.
It's interesting, and I have an idea as to what it is, but I have not invested myself. But yeah, yeah,
Okay.
no, interesting
Um,
for sure.
but one of the key points of Bitcoin as an idea that was kind of talked about for a long time, but we didn't really have the technology to make it, which would be invaluable private property. So
Hmm.
essentially something that no one could take from you or confiscate from you.
Hmm.
And that idea alone is massive, and that's kind of like what a lot of the American idea was founded upon, was that every person's right to themselves and their property is going to be defended by the government rather
Hmm.
than confiscated. And it kind of got reversed after 1913 with the Federal Reserve and all that.
Hmm.
Um, but there's now this huge emphasis, I think, across America, people realizing, oh, wait, how much are they taking from us, And then like companies like yours and Bitcoin and others, the other technologies essentially saying this is how you kind of like buy back your freedom, and then it should be with you because it's a Christian idea, but honestly, if every person has a maximum potential of responsibility for their own lives and for their lives that they're cared for, people they love, then their life is then going to exponentially make other people's lives better because they're making the best decisions for life. And so then everything starts building on that ecosystem again. Um, so I just wanted to kind of tie it to like showing how like your business is kind of like fulfilling that idea of like a very American, unusual work that mostly the other world hasn't really understood. And then they look to America like, why does America work so well? I suppose because we honor those fundamental principles of like life, liberty, and property. So yeah. But this was so awesome, Shelby. Thank you so much for coming on, and it was just so much fun to talk to you. Thanks for sharing so much of progressive ag, what you do in your law of business. And then, yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. It's like it's been so fun. We went on a lot of tangents, and it was
Hmm.
all good. It all got tied back together. I'd say, if I could leave someone that's like struggling to go through the farm transition with something,
Yeah.
there's like big questions to ask yourself. And one of them is, as generation two, do you want to take over the farm?
Mm,
And then if you do, what skills do you think you need in order to become the major decision maker?
that's a good.
And then identifying, what skills where can you find those skills? And then the third question is, when do you want to become the major decision maker? Those are the three most important questions I can ask a generation two. We're starting the timeline. We're identifying your skills. We're identifying dad's or mom or whoever is generation one skills. And then generation one, it's stuff like, how much income do you need to survive?
Hmm.
What are your income needs as you age? And then two is whoever wants to come back to the farm, are they ready? What skills do they need to learn in order for you to feel comfortable handing the reins to them? What do they need to prove to you? What do they need to do in order to get to where you are? And then the most important question that generation one can ask is, what happens when you die? What happens if you die today? Is anyone ready to take over the farm? Where does your spouse live? Do your children move into your house? Who who takes over all of the jobs that you are currently doing? Is that person ready? How do you transition? Do you have a plan in place? Does all of the stuff go through probate? Do you have enough money to pay for your debts?
Mhm.
All of those things are really important, but specifically, it's how do you make yourself replaceable? And that's what the farm transition really is. How can you make yourself replaceable in the business? And that's a hard thing to do, especially for founders of businesses, because all they've been thinking about is how in the heck do I build this thing? How can I survive? And then they make it somehow, and all of a sudden it's like, what? I have to replace myself? But if you want your legacy to continue, if you want your farming or ranching legacy to continue, that's exactly what you have to do. So that's my concluding thoughts. If I guess if anyone wants to get a hold of me, I'm as far as farm transitions and the law stuff goes, I'm only licensed in North Dakota, Minnesota. I can answer general farm transition questions. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can email me. You can email my team at aglegacyteam@outlook.com. That's an email that you could get in touch with me eventually. You can also look up Progressive Ag if you're interested in crop marketing, crop insurance, risk management stuff, certainly. Um, and then we give a free month trial of the crop marketing advice if anyone would like to take a look at that. We cover policies that affect agriculture, and we cover, of course, fundamentals that affect agriculture that don't have to do with our government and foreign governments. So we cover all of that in that, anything that would affect your price, your bottom line as farmers and ranchers. And in general, I guess connect with me on LinkedIn if you're at all curious about stuff like that. Um, yeah, those would probably be the places to find me.
That's great. Thank you. And we'll put all that in the description too, so it's easier for
Sounds
people to get
good.
to. So, well,
Okay.
thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. This was awesome. I feel so blessed. This is so great.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I'll have to have you back on again because I feel like I just like gleamed the surface of like what the world of agriculture is looking like today. So, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We could do this again.